Hey, so I've been meaning to do this vlog and I kind of wasn't even sure how to do it. There's like two things I want to say and I wasn't really sure if it's going to be like 40 seconds or something. But Kevin and I recently rewatched Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise. Um, it's one of these movies where like you have to relive the same day over and over again, but it's very much like a video game where like you're trying to optimize how quickly you can move past a certain level or try to use less ammunition than you did last time and kind of like memorizing where enemies are and things like this. This works when something is choreographed, when something is the same over and over again, like that truck is going to come by every single time. You can't do stuff like that with fighting because your opponent is not choreographed. Your opponent is not going to do literally the same thing over and over again every time you face something. But when you train against different types of fighters all the time, people in your gym who have different styles, you can kind of start to learn how punchers move, how your puncher moves, like this kind of stuff. But it's not quite the same in terms of the memorization factor. But there was something to it in that it wasn't really until the memorized portions of it got let go and it was like you have no more lives left and you have to kind of freestyle it. But he got to that point through the hardcore repetition, same thing. He must have done this day a few thousand times, who knows how many years, and you get killed within that day, so it starts over, so it's not even a 24-hour period and things like this. Training's like that, where you do the same thing over and over and over and over again just to get slightly better in one area of it. That doesn't even mean you're going to get all of the things set with that. But we happened to watch another movie kind of around the same time that we watched Edge of Tomorrow, and that's Take Every Wave. It's the Laird Hamilton documentary. I don't know if it's the one. It's a Laird Hamilton documentary. But for those who don't know who he is, he's a surfer, very, very famous surfer, who basically invented with his team tow surfing, which means you get towed in by a jet ski into a wave that otherwise you wouldn't be able to catch just if you were paddling in. Huge, huge waves, and he's developed technologies attaching things to the board so that he's actually flying above the water, which is really incredible. It's kind of taking windsurfing and applying it to surfing, wave surfing. It's truly incredible, and they attach the board to themselves so that the board doesn't get kicked out from under them on these monster waves and things like this. But there's a part in the documentary where a piece that he attaches to the bottom of his board, so it's basically like a little rudder under the water, and then there's a 3-foot piece of metal and then his board. So basically he can float above the water and surf kind of above the wave. And he's really excited to get this piece. He's been working on it for a while, and he had it manufactured for him in a place that does metal like that, because you can't do that kind of stuff in your garage. And he got it, and he had to try it out, right? So he's trying it out, and it's a documentary, so they don't show the entire day of him trying it. But when he's been trying it for a little while, he talks about how exhausted he is because he's been concentrating so hard. He's got concentration fatigue. And someone like Laird talking about this really struck a chord with me as someone who's trying very hard to become very good at Muay Thai, which is that there is a degree to which concentration, having to focus on something so hard, is so much more exhausting than physical exhaustion. I can run hill sprints all fucking day. I don't care. You just have to push yourself through it. It doesn't mean you don't get tired. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean anything. But physical exhaustion is actually, on a scale of exhaustions, pretty easy to deal with. Wanting to throw up, you just kind of get past it. Mental fatigue, concentration fatigue, when you're trying so hard to get the technique right, or to see what your opponent's doing, to in sparring do the 3 things that you said you were going to do, that kind of concentration fatigue is intense. And I wrote a blog post many years ago, The Myth of Overtraining, that is one of my most read and most controversial pieces. In brief, overtraining is real. You and nobody you know will ever come near it. So it's you can talk about the symptoms, you can talk about things like this. There is such a thing as overtraining, but the degree to which you have to go in order to hit those things, I train really fucking hard. I don't even get close. Concentration fatigue, that kind of overtraining, this can cause the symptoms and experiences of overtraining. To me, this is real. Like the mental overtraining is real, and it comes from over-concentrating. So this is why flow, this is why play is really, really important in your training. If you spend all your time like super concentrated on getting this technique exactly right, where your foot is stepping, whether you're turning your hip, how your arm is angling out, you need to concentrate on each of those things, and you need to like get the technique right in order to take the overall effort and kind of increase the efficacy of what you're doing. Because if you have technique, you don't have to use so much power all the time. And if you don't have any stamina and power, you can't use technique for shit. So they kind of go together. But I have definitely experienced this thing of like depression and exhaustion and just kind of languishing because of over concentration. And it just means like balance it, like in the same way that in this blog post I talk about the way to avoid overtraining is not taking huge days off. It's making sure that you rest in accordance to how you're training. If you're concentrating a lot, if you're focusing really, really hard, if you're just focused all the time, you have to balance that with play. You have to balance that with just feeling. I have come to find, I've been told this, but it takes a long time to actually realize the truth of something for yourself, like to know it for real. In Buddhism, they talk about this as like you can have a teacher and they can describe sweetness to you really, really well, but until you actually take sugar and put it on your tongue and experience it for yourself, not only do you no longer need a teacher, but now you really know what sweet is, even if you've intellectually understood it for a really long time. That's what I'm talking about. You have to actually feel things. That's what my trainers have talked to me about. You have to feel things. It's not about like telling yourself I did that right or telling yourself that you did it wrong. It's like you have to feel whether it was right or wrong. And the sooner you learn to feel things, the sooner you'll be able to self-correct and self-adjust and not have to focus so much in order to make those adjustments, which is a really big deal. And in this documentary with Laird, when he was like, I have concentration fatigue, and he was totally just like exhausted from going out and trying this thing, is that because he had to concentrate so hard on how to balance it and where he was feeling, where the rudder was and things like this, he actually could not just feel, which as a surfer, every wave is different. So you have to feel. Like if you don't have really deep feelings of like, oh, I'm just going to put my hand down for a second, I'm going to angle a little bit this way, I'm going to get ahead of this little swell, that kind of thing. If you can't feel it, you're just crashing all the time. And that happens. Like you have to fall before you're nice, but you can't mentally concentrate your way into beauty or grace or any of the things that make great Muay Thai. So I've been trying to think of ways to remind myself to feel and not concentrate so hard, because when you try to quiet your mind down, when you try to be like, okay, now it's time to just feel these things, it's really hard to quiet down the inner critic who wants to like, let's get that concentration fatigue going. It tries to go really, really hard and like keep focusing on things because you want to be correct. Letting go of correct and feeling the mistakes, feeling the inefficiencies, feeling the effort even, are things that just take time, and you just have to spend a lot of time in that state to be able to feel it faster, feel it better, feel it more accurately. And that's why, even though Edge of Tomorrow was this kind of like endless repetition kind of thing, you do have to do that, but you can't memorize every single move. You have to eventually start to feel and experiment. If you do the same thing every day to try to like save your ammunition and be a little bit more efficient, or like roll 3 times instead of 4 to not get hit by the truck, you can memorize those little things, but you have to experiment. You have to try rolling under the truck. You have to think to roll under the truck in the first place. So this is my babbly way of talking about how these 2 movies spoke to me in the past week in terms of how I'm trying to grow as a Muay Thai fighter, how I'm trying to grow in my training. And it's not easy, but it is simple. Like, it's pretty straightforward. Letting go is really difficult, but not complicated. So that's what I'm saying there. Feeling, as Chai would say.